Well, welcome to Christ and Culture. This is Pastor Jeff Short with another analysis video of a cultural news item that we're going to be looking at today from a Christian biblical worldview. And the purpose of this program is to try to help Christians and other people who are leaning toward Christianity, who want to follow God and want to understand the times that we live in. The Bible says that the sons of Issachar were wise because they understood the times. And so we have to be like the sons of Issachar. We have to be able to understand the times. And what we are living in is an age of propaganda, and we have a really good example of this age of propaganda in dealing with a news item that showed up in Yahoo News. And this writer is one of a handful, there are many of them, a master propagandist, you might say. Look at this article with me, and we're going to go through bit by bit and try to translate this into real language that we can all understand. And the headline is that U.S. Republicans target transgender youth health care in legislative push. So they're, right off the bat, they're trying to say that the mean old Republicans are targeting transgender youth in health care legislation. So they're picking on transgender youth. And what does that mean? That means that transgender youth are boys that were born boys that said they want to become girls, and those who have been born female, they want to become a boy. So these are confused teenagers. These are confused school kids who need a lot of counseling. They need a lot of help. They need a lot of support in affirming who they are. And they have really, it's at core, it's an identity crisis. They have a crisis of who they are. And they're living in a time when it's really hard for a young person to know who they are, because you have these powerful institutions like the U.S. government under Joe Biden and the Democrats who are pushing this transgender contagion. You have now the American Psychological Association, Psychiatric Association, the medical associations, the medical fields are all pushing transgenderism right now. It's the in thing. It's a fad. You have now corporations jumping on board and not wanting to be left behind because they think that's the wave of the future. You have the universities and colleges. You have the Democratic Party, who's all in now on transgenderism. So, yeah, it's a hard time to be a kid and know who you are, because you have liberal teachers, unions, and associations telling teachers and administrators to encourage the children to make a decision as to who they want to be, boy or girl. And putting the burden of switching a gender, turning a boy into a girl and a girl into a boy, as if that's even possible. It's not. So you're confusing kids and telling them that they, one, can choose at this stage, instead of saying you are already who you are. You were born a boy, and you will be a boy because that's what you are biologically and in every other way. And then telling girls that they are girls because they were born girls and born female. Instead of doing that, they're now confusing the kids into encouraging them to reevaluate. These are fundamental and foundational issues that should never have to be dealt with in childhood and at no point in life, because once you are born, that is the gender and sex you are, and you will never depart from that, biologically speaking. So instead of encouraging children to seek counseling and get psychiatric care and therapeutic care, all of these powerful institutions are now talking in terms of changing their body, putting kids on hormone blockers and putting kids under the knife, even surgery, to align their body with their mind, when they should be encouraging children to align their mind with their body. So we're going to look through here and look at the propaganda here. We have to, as Christians, be wise. We have to not fall for this. I know a lot of Christians are falling for this. They're saying, well, let's just go along to get along. Let's be nice and kind. And it's causing havoc amongst our younger members of society. U.S. Republicans target transgender youth health care in legislative push. Health care, another thing. Health care is when you have a sick person and you are making him or her well. Or you have a person who might get sick and you're keeping them healthy. Well, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about taking perfectly healthy children with perfectly healthy male and female sexual organs and body parts, and they're talking about cutting those parts off, mutilating the body, deforming this person, just to match the confusion of the little child's mind or the teenager's mind. And this is atrocious. Look at this. This Daniel Trotta has thrown in here so much propaganda that we have to go through it piece by piece. It says, Republican legislators across the United States have escalated a campaign to ban certain health care for transgender youth. No, what is happening in reality, when you want to translate that out into reality, is common sense, sanity. Legislators across the country are trying to prevent trans activists in hijacking a whole generation of young kids to take hormone blockers and go and have top surgery and such like that. They're trying to prevent the mutilation of children. They're trying to prevent the permanent scarring of the littlest members of society. And that's what they're doing. Not anything like they're trying to prevent health care. No, they're trying to prevent the mutilation of body parts by butchers who are doing this for profit. That's the reality, not this kind of propagandistic statement. In some cases, seeking to charge parents and doctors with child abuse if they provide the treatment. That would be fining and threatening parents and healthcare professionals from producing these butcheries. So yeah, there is something to be worried about. But this writer is trying to say, well, they're trying to keep healthcare away from young people. No, they're trying to prevent young people from being permanently disfigured by irresponsible professionals that should know better. This year's legislative agenda, unprecedented in the number and scope of bills around transgender issues. Yes, that's because they're being pushed on us by the trans activists. Also include measures to block teachers from using pronouns that match the student's gender identity. Or in other words, rules that would prevent teachers from having to follow every little quirk and quiver of a child's twisted and confused imagination. Child comes in one day, I want to be called a he. And then the next day, I want to be called a they. I want to be called a their, zer, they. And the teachers have to jump around at the child's beck and call? No. So, yeah, that makes sense. You pass a rule in the schools that say, no, the teachers do not have to follow the child's whims of the day and run around and asking kids, what are you called today? No, this is insanity. And yet this writer tries to think that's terrible that the teachers would not go along with the child's every little change of mind that might come every day. Another example, ban trans girls from playing on girls' sports teams. You mean boys that are trying to act like girls. That's how you have to translate that sentence. Ban trans girls means ban boys who are trying to act like girls from playing on girls' sports teams. Yes, that's perfectly reasonable. Yes, we don't want dudes in the girls' locker room. Yeah, we don't want dudes running in the girls' track meet. Yeah, we don't want dudes playing competitive sports against girls because it's dangerous for the real girls. And these jokers are trying to win at any cost by identifying, quote, identifying as a girl. Yeah, we don't want that. Perfectly reasonable. But this author is giving these examples of terrible things that are happening and require trans people to use the bathroom corresponding to their signed birth. Yeah, we don't want boys going into the girls' bathroom. Right, exactly. Or worse, we don't want men going into the girls' bathroom. I don't care what they identify. I don't care if they identify as a little pony. Men should not be able to go into the girls' bathroom. That's perfectly reasonable. And yet this author is like, oh, this is terrible. These trans people can't do what they want to do. It's all about the trans, what they want to do. No, it's not about the trans. It's about the general population having to bow for every sexual, deviant, perverted behavior that trans people want, and it's not right. So yeah, I applaud all those measures. As Christians, we know that God made them male, one sex, female, another sex. In the early chapters of Genesis, it spells it right out. And then Jesus says, a man shall leave his father and mother. Those are gender binaries, father, male, female, mother, and be united to his wife. So man leaves his father and mother, that's gender, man, and then he's joined to his wife, that's the other binary, female, and they become one flesh. That's a marriage. Male, female, marriage. There's only one kind of marriage, male and female. And there are only two kinds of humans, males and females. And there aren't these all different genders, 56 types of genders. No, this is foolishness, and I applaud the lawmakers that are trying to establish rules for schools and in general society, laws that prohibit all of this confusion. And it is confusing, especially to kids. The aggressive legislative push comes as battles over gender and sexuality increasingly are being fought in the U.S. classroom. Yeah, aggressive legislative push because of the aggressive push by the trans activists and the liberal, radical, social Marxist Democrats who are aggressively pushing. So yeah, there's a pushback, aggressive pushback that sane members of society are trying to establish in legislation to counter this insanity. Yes. Yeah, let it be more aggressive. It needs to be more aggressive. We're too accommodating. We're too sensitive. We're too sympathetic. We need to be drawing a line and saying, no, we're not going to have this foolishness in the public schools. We're not going to have this foolishness in women's sports. You can do crazy in your own home, but don't bring it out into public. It says courtrooms and political campaigns. Republican includes former President Donald Trump. Okay, so now they've found a lightning rod that they can bring into the issue and get the liberal, leftist, Democratic base all riled up by mentioning the name Donald Trump. He has embraced restricting trans rights ahead of the 2024 White House race, a push that trans advocates will fear will harm transgender children. So, big bad Donald Trump, orange man bad, Trump derangement syndrome brought into the equation and saying, see, Trump is for this restricting of gender confusion. Yeah, I'm glad he is. But on one hand, it's too bad because now the issue won't be the insanity of these trans activist measures. Now the issue will be Donald Trump. Now that's what the left will be all talking about instead of the issue. But we have to keep on talking about the issues because this involves little children, and we have to stand up for the children. This issue will be a national debate in the next presidential election, says Jay Richards, a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank. If Republicans in the relevant states handle this properly, it's actually politically beneficial. Yeah, because most common sense Americans realize that you can't have grown men walking into girls' locker rooms. Duh, of course. Also, you can't have boys, mature, college-age boys, coming into female swim meets like so-called Leah Thomas and winning all the events. Yeah, you can't have that either. So that's insanity. Most people recognize that insanity. And so, yeah, there's a good chance that these bills will be passed because even the people who are maybe left-leaning look at that and go, that's crazy. No, I don't want my little girl in the locker room with the boys. No, I don't want my daughter in a public restroom and men coming in who, quote, identify as women. No. Think tank supporters for the proposed legislation in several states, though Richards said some bills, such as those that might seek criminal liabilities for doctors and parents, might be overly draconian. So he's saying that the ones that seek fines and penalties for doctors and parents might not be as popular. They might not be because people may not want to blame the doctors, but if the doctors are doing something wrong or the parents are doing something wrong, yeah, they should be punished. Republicans have introduced more than 300 bills in 33 states aiming to limit transgender and wider lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer rights this year. Good. That whole category, the LGBTQ, that is all sinful. That is all deviant, immoral, perverted sexual behavior. If you're a Christian, you should never, ever be affirming this category. This is a category of sin. This is not in keeping with God Almighty's design for humanity. Male and female, the gender binary, there are only two categories, male and female. You cannot change what you are. You are not assigned a sex at birth. Your sex is determined based on your body parts. And that is so basic, that is so simple. No culture has ever questioned it except our so-called enlightened, educated culture, which in many ways is becoming more foolish as the years go by. More than double the number of bills filed in 2022. Good, because people are finally getting on to what this scam is that the trans activists and the Democratic liberals, leftists are doing. They are trying to basically extinguish all Christian moral standards and all standards of decency in society. They're trying to upend society for their own devious reasons. In addition to familiar legislative efforts targeting sports and bathrooms, the emphasis this year on banning gender-affirming care, the goal of 97 bills in 27 states. That is such a euphemism. That is such a lying phrase. Gender-affirming care. If you just looked at that and you had no idea what they're talking about, you would say gender-affirming care. Oh, great. That's a great phrase. It means whatever sex and gender you were born with, then we need to affirm that, right? Right. That would be the common sense. No. That's not what they mean. Gender affirming care means that, say you're born a boy because you have boy male body parts. Okay, you're born a boy. You go through your young life as a boy. And then maybe at age 12, you start thinking, well, maybe I'm a girl. So I think I'll start affirming that I'm a girl and I identify as a girl. And now I want surgery to take away my maleness and try to duplicate the female body parts. And so that's called gender affirming care. It's not affirming your actual, in reality, sex. It's the one that's in your mind that you're confused about. That's affirming that one. So the healthcare professionals and medical doctors and hospitals, they call gender affirming care when they affirm your confusion as a little kid about what you are. See the insanity of all this? Gender affirming care. There it is again. Affirming a child's delusions care covers a variety of treatments, including puberty blockers. Those are strong medical chemicals that are pumped into a kid's body to block normal growth and development. Hormone therapy. and exceedingly rare cases for trans people under 18 surgery. Well, what do you mean by exceedingly rare? What, 10, 100, 1,000 of them a year? That's too rare. Rare would be 0. But it isn't rare. It's happening more and more. And it will pick up if this trans activist agenda is affirmed. That's surgery they're talking about. Operating on kids before they're even, maybe some of them are even teenagers. Medical associations, which call the bills transphobic, say that such health care can be life-saving. So now we come into the Trump card. I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about the Trump card of all LGBTQ activists' arguments. And that is, if they don't get their way, trans kids will die. How will they die? They'll kill themselves. Suicide. This is supposed to be the emotional blackmail card that they play. See, you got to give us our way, or else kids are going to die because they're going to kill themselves. Trans people who have the surgery commit suicide at higher rates, statistics show, than the ones that don't have the surgery. So the so-called gender-affirming care actually produces more psychological, psychiatric problems and more suicide. That's the reality. So don't let them say, well, if we don't get our way, trans activists get their way, well, what's going to happen is there are going to be deaths, and it's going to be your blood on your hands. No. The blood is on the hands of the people who are pushing the trans agenda on children and young people. And then when it doesn't all work out, and when their life doesn't come out golden, then they're disappointed and their expectations are shattered, and then they try to kill themselves. When in reality, they needed counseling and therapy to help them feel good about themselves and their own body. In many states, transgender children and their parents have testified against the proposed legislation describing how gender-affirming care, euphemism, changed their lives and fearing the impact of the bills, which have proliferated. What about the testimonies where the gender-affirming care ruined their lives? And all those testimonies, too. See, they don't allow those voices to be heard. They want all these voices to be heard, but they don't want those voices to be heard because those voices are shamed into silence because the gay activists are so strong. But many opponents of trans rights believe that the sex assigned at birth, that is normal biology, is immutable. It is. Yeah. The DNA. You can look at any so-called trans woman, and if you put it under an electron microscope, it'll show male. It's in the genes. It is immutable. You cannot change an XX chromosome into an XY chromosome. So it's immutable. And distrust the prevailing opinions of medical associations with specialties in pediatrics. Yeah, we don't trust them because they've been politicized by the left. They have changed their standards because of conforming to the pressure groups. Yeah, we don't trust that process. So the trans activists and the LGBTQ lobby, they boycott and they put all this political pressure, and lo and behold, medical associations cave in, and then they say, see, the specialists say, yeah, because you pressured them. They contend the government must intervene to prevent parents and doctors from permanently harming children. Exactly. Governors in South Dakota and Utah have already signed into law gender-affirming care bans that state legislatures passed this year. Good for them. Bills in Idaho, Missouri, Wyoming would criminalize providing such care as felony child abuse, while measures in Tennessee and Texas would categorize it as abuse under family law. Exactly. That's what it is. It is child abuse when you put children, perfectly healthy children, into surgery and pump chemicals in them, strong chemicals to prevent their normal growth. That's child abuse. It's got something akin to Dr. Frankenstein. The Tennessee bill, which would bar doctors from providing gender-affirming care to anyone under 18, passed the state's Republican-led Senate Monday. Great. That's positive. Transgender advocates say moves are punitive, especially considering difficulty of getting treatment due to cost, lack of family support, or trouble finding a provider. Well, not unless the government steps in, and that could happen very soon under like a Biden administration, where the government would pay for all these treatments. The idea that we have a social contagion encouraging people to be trans in a climate that is hostile to trans people is so unbelievably offensive. It isn't hostile to trans people. In schools today, especially like junior high, it is the cool thing to be trans, for girls especially. It isn't against society. It's with society in these schools. You aren't ostracized for becoming trans. You are put on a pedestal for being trans. It's the cool thing, and that's the problem. That is the contagion that these girls are under. Out of 121,884 minors diagnosed with gender dysphoria from 2017 to 2021, fewer than 15%, or an average of about 3,500 per year, receive puberty blockers or hormones therapy, according to data analysis. Okay, well, there you have it. So that figure was supposed to be, well, there aren't very many of them. 15% is a big, big percentage when you're talking about children's lives ruined. And that number, the beginning number, diagnosed with gender dysphoria, I'm not even sure they have to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria if they come in to the doctor's office. They can be put on these treatments without a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. But it's a lot more than that anyway, and the pressure is building for there to even be more. So as Christians, we have to fight this because this is positively evil. This is positively satanic. Now, I know some people say, well, Satan is always brought in to, counter everything that you don't like. And that is true in some cases. Some people demonize the other side just to try to oppose it. But in this case, when you're taking perfectly healthy kids, have nothing wrong with their bodies, and you're cutting pieces out of their body, and you're putting strong chemicals in them to change their bodies, when there's nothing at all wrong with their body, and the only thing that's wrong with them is their thinking, their mind, they're suffering identity crisis, they're having all kinds of confusion because of the LGBTQ trans activist movement telling them things that are contrary to reality. So we as Christians need to be on the role of encouraging sanity and encouraging people to conform to the reality that God created them. And yeah, we live in a fallen world, so there's going to be confusion. There are going to be people, children, teenagers, young people, middle-aged people, all kinds of people who are confused about all kinds of things, about their sexual identity, all kinds of things. They need counseling. We need to have them in therapy to work through these issues, but not resort to changing their body to conform to their confusion. That is a dead-end street. It will only end in death and destruction. And it's destroying our culture. So I hope this is something that you pray about and ask God to bring about a revival of sanity in our culture before it's too late. Talk to you next week. God bless. Bye-bye.